Revenge with Karen. The last thing Lisa expected to hear at 5:47 p.m. on a Friday was the word fire. Not in a warning, not in an alert, just in the way the new COO barked it like a dog command. If I see one more damn sync error, someone's getting fired. He was pacing outside the war room again, practically foaming at the mouth over a half-second delay in the real-time dashboard. Meanwhile, the actual issue had already been fixed, 12 minutes ago, by Lisa herself, after a routine packet loss hiccup in the Idaho node. It wasn't even a bug, just a hiccup. Temporary, logged, documented, corrected. But Vince wasn't really looking for problems. He was looking for someone to blame. Lisa sat motionless, still sipping the now cold green tea she made at lunch. She watched the cursor blink on the last line of the report she'd been writing all day. Her screen glowed with quiet order, data validation flags, code snippets with inline comments, a color-coded workflow diagram that was basically an art piece. This was Lisa's kingdom, built over 14 years, custom by necessity, maintained by obsession, understood by exactly one person, her. If you've ever worked in an office where the loudest guy in the meeting knows the least, then you already know Vince. Slick haircut, no keyboard calluses, talks about scaling efficiencies like they're spices he picked up at Whole Foods, kind of guy who asks what this button does while slamming enter. He'd been at Vierx for 3 weeks and had already fired 2 department leads, merged 3 teams without informing HR, and outsourced IT ticket triage to a chatbot that once diagnosed a server outage as an emotional boundary issue. That was Vince. Lisa had stayed quiet through it all. Because when you build the foundation, you don't scream when the roof leaks. You just keep the basement dry. Tonight the ceiling was sagging, and Vince was looking at her like she'd poked the hole. By the way, quick thing while we're here, if this story is starting to hit a little too close to home, and statistically 93% of y'all are listening without subscribing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Toss us a like while you're at it. It seriously helps the team keep the lights on and the coffee flowing, especially when we're burning midnight oil writing these. All right, back to Lisa. She typed her last line of code, exhaled, and hit save. At the same time, the ticketing system chirped. Sync resolved, Lisa marks. She leaned back and stretched, a quiet satisfaction settling in her bones like good bourbon. She had no idea that by Monday, her name would be brought up in a board meeting with a tone usually reserved for missing persons. The office around her was starting to empty. Shell from Ops waved goodbye without looking up from her phone. Tom in finance was already halfway down the hallway, arguing with his wife on Bluetooth. The only sound left was the soft clatter of Lisa's keyboard as she annotated the final status update in the system log, like a surgeon closing the last stitch. No one said thank you. No one ever did. Her fixes didn't explode like fireworks, they just worked. That was Lisa's gift. She made the complex invisible, kept the fragile gears of a bloated, over-engineered logistics system turning so seamlessly that the people upstairs assumed it was all magic. Or worse, automated. She packed up her things slowly, methodically, wiped her desk, shut down her terminal the correct way, no yanking cords, no reckless closures. She paused for a moment, glancing at the corner of her screen where the CPU usage graph idled at perfect 3%. Her system was stable, clean, safe. Behind that elegant hum was an ecosystem of patches, dependencies, and nested failsafes, some going back 9 years. One of those failsafes blinked gently in the background, invisible to everyone but her. A heartbeat she'd built long ago. A failsafe for the failsafe, buried under 3 layers of permissions. It wasn't destructive, just selective. A dead man's switch, she once joked to her therapist. If the wrong person pulled the plug, the system would keep humming, but it would stop listening. Lisa smiled faintly. She didn't expect to need it, not yet. She grabbed her bag, nodded once at her monitor like a silent goodbye, and headed for the elevator. Vince was still barking orders on his headset, something about manual overrides and reducing latency. He didn't see her. Didn't know he'd just walked past the one person keeping the entire back end from turning into digital oatmeal. Lisa stepped out into the parking lot as the first drops of rain started to fall. She didn't run. Just flipped her hood up and walked to her car, calm as a monk. She didn't know yet what was coming. But part of her, some deep, locked-away part, hoped they'd push her too far. She was tired of being the ghost in the machine. She had just sat down with a lukewarm cup of vending machine coffee and was halfway through correcting a mislabeled fulfillment tag when it happened. Vince didn't knock, didn't clear his throat, didn't even lower his voice. He came in like a man who mistook his reflection for God's approval, waving a stack of printed error logs like they were divorce papers. "Explain this," he barked, slamming the papers on her desk with the grace of a toddler flipping a Monopoly board. Lisa blinked once. The logs were from yesterday. The same 12-minute sync hiccup she'd already fixed, logged, and noted in the morning stand-up. Twice, including the rollback contingency and the local cash reroute. "That was resolved," she said evenly, hands still on the keyboard. "Issue ID 76345. I annotated it. I don't care about your process." Vince shouted. His voice bounced off the drywall and sent nearby heads popping up like gophers. "You've had 14 years to build this rat's nest. Now I've got the board asking why order confirmations look like a toddler drew them with crayon." "That's not even related to," she started, but he cut her off. "You're done. Clear your desk. Now." You could have heard a pin drop if it weren't for the humming of 20 open-plan desktops pretending they weren't witnessing a career execution. Someone coughed. Someone else minimized Slack. Lisa just stared at him for half a beat longer than usual. She was watching a kid shove a fork into an electrical socket and wondering whether to stop him. "Okay," she said, no raised voice, no desperate pleas, no awkward HR buffer pretending to mediate, just okay. She turned back to her screen, calmly clicked out of the client dashboard, closed her SQL shell, and opened an old terminal window tucked beneath a tangle of tabs. The icon was a teal square labeled Upkeep bat. She double-clicked. Pop-up blinked, Run Final Cleanup Script. She hit Enter. The cursor danced for half a second, then stopped. No dramatic red text, no self-destruct sequence countdown, just silence, like a tomb being sealed. Now, Vince repeated like she hadn't already started packing. Lisa unplugged her keyboard like it was an afterthought, slid her 2 notebooks into her bag, the ones with 15 years of network topology diagrams and dependency flowcharts, reached into the drawer for her thumb drive. Not the personal one. The company-issued one she never used. She left it behind. Useless now. "You'll need to sign the exit checklist," barked a junior HR rep who had magically appeared from somewhere behind Vince, like a bureaucratic NPC. She held out a clipboard like it was radioactive. Lisa signed it without looking, then handed over her badge. "You'll be escorted out," HR added, the enthusiastic warmth of a vending machine rejecting a crumpled dollar. Lisa gave one final glance to her terminal. The maintenance script window had already closed itself. Behind it, a soft gray message on the internal dashboard now read, "System check completed. Handshake key required." She didn't need to explain what that meant, because no one in the building even knew it existed. The system was up. It would keep running on autopilot for a while. It wouldn't listen to anyone who didn't have the handshake key. A 4-line verification sequence tied to a script stored offline, and now inaccessible. Not malicious, not sabotage, just a safeguard, one that Vince himself had once described as paranoid overkill. Lisa didn't even smirk. There was no time for smugness. Only precision. This was not revenge. It was contingency. She walked past Vince without a word. Past HR, past the CFO who was awkwardly leaning against the glass wall, pretending to check his phone. Not a single person made eye contact. It wasn't shame, they were afraid. Of her? Of Vince? Probably both. In the elevator, she finally exhaled. Her hands were shaking a little, not from fear, but from restraint. It took everything in her not to turn around and say, "Good luck fixing it without me." But she didn't need to. The cleanup script would speak for itself. Outside, rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart over the parking lot like tissue paper, and the sun made a reluctant return. Lisa got into her car, started the engine, and just sat. 10 seconds, maybe 20. Then she put the car in drive and pulled out, leaving behind the building she had spent a third of her life maintaining. Behind her, the lights inside Vierks glowed obliviously. For now, let them run the show. Let Vince lead his little parade. The system would run on fumes for a bit, just long enough to give them false confidence. Then the lights would flicker. Orders would stall. Dashboards would choke. And somewhere in the middle of all that panic, someone would ask, "Who built this?" And someone else would whisper, "She's gone." The world didn't end when Lisa left the building. No fire alarms, no server meltdowns, no managers sprinting down hallways screaming her name. Just the hollow silence of a Friday office pretending not to bleed. The kind of silence where you can hear the copier recalibrating and the janitor unwrapping a sandwich 3 cubicles over. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. People saw her, sure. Heads turned. But nobody spoke. Nobody helped. That's the thing about quiet professionals. People assume you'll always be there until you're not. Michelle from Ops tapped nervously at her phone, not even pretending to text anymore. Tom in finance stood halfway out of his cube like he might say something, but just shifted his weight and sat back down. Even the junior dev, Brandon, the one Lisa once pulled out of a permissions mess so bad he almost deleted half the sandbox, just looked down at his desk like he was trying to remember what oxygen felt like. HR followed her to the elevator, but didn't say much. We'll follow up next week, mumbled, flipping pages on a half-complete termination checklist that might as well have been for coffee machine. Lisa just nodded. The doors closed. That was that. No exit interview, no thanks, no handshake, just quiet shoes on polished tile and a badge that wouldn't beep anymore. She drove home in the kind of trance only rage can't touch. Not angry, not even sad, just done. Done carrying a system on her back while empty suits played executive. Done fixing dashboards at 3 a.m. while the marketing guy bragged about optimizing pipelines he didn't even know existed. Done being a ghost they only remembered when something broke. She didn't check Slack when she got home. Didn't check email. She deleted both apps. Then, because the universe has a weird sense of humor, it started raining, slow, steady, soft like static. She made herself a Negroni, kicked off her boots, just sat by the window with an old fleece blanket and the sound of water thumping the gutter like applause. For the first time in 14 years, no one needed her, and it felt okay. On Saturday, she went hiking, picked a trail an hour out of town where cell service evaporated before the first switchback. The air smelled like wet pine and moss and disobedience. Her knees protested, her lungs burned, but damn, it felt good to move. No notifications. No quick questions. Just her, a muddy ridge, and the reminder that her body was not, in fact, a chair attachment. Back at Vierks, things weren't falling apart, yet, but the edges were fraying. It started with a 404 error in the fulfillment dashboard. The warehouse in Cincinnati couldn't push updates to the master inventory. At first, they blamed the VPN, then the warehouse tech, then Comcast. By midday, someone noticed the real-time delivery logs were lagging by 6 hours. Not broken, just wrong. A junior dev filed a ticket, weird caching delay. An intern rebooted the main sync service twice. No change. By Sunday, someone flagged that the system was up, but orders weren't shipping. Customer service emails doubled. The chatbot had defaulted to generic responses. We're looking into it. Still, no one panicked. It was just a weekend, after all. They figured Lisa's departure would sting for a few days, then things would stabilize. Didn't understand yet. Couldn't understand. Because no one really knew how the guts of the system worked. They knew where the dashboards were. They knew which buttons to press. But they didn't know what those buttons were wired to. Lisa did. But Lisa was out on her porch Sunday night, wrapped in that same fleece blanket, sipping a second Negroni, and listening to a true crime podcast about a guy who faked his death with dental records and a pair of pigs. She laughed when the rain came back, heavier this time, as if the clouds had finally caught up to the rest of her week. She still hadn't checked her phone. Hadn't needed to. Because when you leave behind a structure you designed, one built like a puzzle box with pieces only you know how to align, you don't wait for the collapse. You know it's coming. You just wait for the echo. Monday started like every other corporate Monday. Too many emails, too much coffee, and not enough answers. At Vierks Solutions, things were already unraveling before the first K-Cup was finished brewing. At 7:42 a.m., the Phoenix warehouse reported a failed inventory update. The request pinged the server, but nothing changed in the dashboard. A second sync attempt triggered a lockout. At 7:44, Dallas filed the same ticket. By 8:03, fulfillment requests across 4 distribution centers were queuing without processing. No errors. No alerts. A silence like shouting into a padded room. The system looked fine. No blinking red lights. No fatal error messages. But nothing was moving, like a heart with perfect rhythm, and no blood flow. Vince stormed in around 8:20, already scowling. He'd gotten a text from a board member asking why the weekend numbers didn't update on their mobile dashboard. He assumed it was the BI team's fault, or maybe the cloud vendor, or Mercury being in retrograde. Truth, Lisa's protocol had kicked in around midnight Sunday. The system was up, but it required a proprietary handshake key for real-time updates, a tiny authentication protocol buried under 2 levels of abstraction. Nothing would fail visibly. It would all appear to work, just slower, less accurate, more haunted, and haunted it was. The CTO, of course, was still in Aruba, trying to kiteboard and ignoring Slack like it owed him money. Left Vince with 3 junior devs, a dev ops contractor in Romania who only worked nights, and a half-dozen platform specialists who could navigate a dashboard, but wouldn't know a system log if it punched them in the neck. Vince, red-faced and sweating through his button-up, slammed his palms on the glass table in the war room. "Fix it, I don't care how." Fix what, sir?" asked Brandon, the junior who once thought AWS stood for another weird script. "All of it," Vince growled. "Get orders moving again. We've already got 6 complaints from priority clients, and I've got legal asking why we're out of SLA range. Should we reboot the sync server?" Another dev offered. "Sure," Vince barked. "Reboot everything." So they did, and it made things worse. Orders that were queued mid-process got scrambled. Partial shipments were marked complete. Inventory counts reset. Warehouse in Spokane accidentally triggered a return cycle for 1,400 units of outdoor generators in August. Support tickets quadrupled. The chatbot defaulted to level 1 escalation and began forwarding every customer complaint to a shared inbox that no one had checked since January. And Lisa? Lisa was on her couch in pajama pants, flipping through an old photo album she hadn't touched in years. She didn't know what the weather was doing. Her phone was upside down on the counter, set to do not disturb. Her inbox had 42 unread messages. She hadn't read a single one. A part of her wanted to check, to see the chaos. But that would have been indulgent. Lisa wasn't here for vengeance. She was here for peace. If they were smart, they'd figure it out. But she knew better. At 10:13 a.m., a director from logistics tried to manually override the routing script to force a sync. The system asked for the handshake key. He assumed it was a new security measure. He opened a ticket with IT. At 10:45, a panicked warehouse manager flagged that dozens of shipment labels weren't scanning. They were printing with placeholder codes, values that shouldn't even exist unless the system thought it was running in test mode. At 11:12, Vince was yelling into a call with procurement. "No, don't know why it's saying we owe them 6 pallets of patio furniture from 2021. That's a glitch. We're working on it." At 12:30 p.m., someone finally remembered Lisa. "Well, she built the architecture," said a voice in the room. Vince didn't flinch. "She's gone." By 1:15, the board was briefed. Estimated revenue impact per hour, $500,000. Projected brand damage, moderate to catastrophic. Estimated time to resolution, unknown. Lisa, meanwhile, was outside watering her plants. She just repotted a stubborn ficus that kept leaning to the left no matter what she did. She smiled at it. For once, something else could be stubborn. Not her problem anymore. Inside Vayerk's HQ, the lights were still on, but no one was home. By Tuesday morning, Vayerk Solutions had bled roughly $6 million into the void, and the bleeding wasn't slowing down. Finance flagged it around 6:12 a.m. The overnight reports showed inventory write-offs with no receipts, return requests on fulfilled orders, and a peculiar $800,000 discrepancy in shipping reconciliations. One of the controllers triple-checked the audit trail, squinted at the logs, and said, "This doesn't make sense. It's not broken. It's just wrong." By 7:00 a.m., the C-suite call logs were filled with screaming. Priority clients were calling hourly. One Fortune 100 partner threatened to invoke breach of contract clauses if order integrity wasn't restored within 24 hours. A retail distributor in Nevada had canceled 2 weeks of warehouse pickups, citing suspicious data anomalies and inability to trust Vayerk's routing tables. A logistics vendor sent a formal letter through counsel, one that used the phrase gross negligence in system continuity. The term lawsuit was no longer hypothetical. Vince, meanwhile, had entered what HR would later describe as an agitated, extended monologue cycle. He kept repeating the same lines over and over in meetings. "We're close. It's just a sync loop. Someone'll fix it." No one did. By 8:42 a.m., the head of sales finally asked the question that had been hovering like a ghost in the server room. "Wait," Lisa built the logistics brain. "Has anyone asked her to come back?" Silence, like someone dropped a glass on a marble floor. Vince snapped his pen in half and said, "She's gone. We're not crawling back to her." The room stayed quiet. No one argued, not out loud. But something shifted, an invisible tectonic crack under the surface of leadership. For the first time, the people in that war room realized Vince wasn't looking for solutions. He was protecting his pride. Brandon, the junior dev, opened Slack in a separate tab and typed out a message, deleted it. then retyped it, then deleted it again. Eventually, he just sent Lisa a text. Did you do something? Lisa was in a hammock in her backyard, barefoot, drinking coffee that didn't come from a breakroom pod machine. The ficus beside her was leaning again, but she let it. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the message, tilted her head, and smiled like someone watching a cat discover a mirror. She tapped out a reply. Winking face, she didn't send a long explanation. Didn't gloat. Just let the emoji hang in the air like a riddle in a locked room. Back at Vierks, Brandon read the reply and turned pale. He didn't say a word. Just quietly opened a folder he hadn't touched in a year, a training doc Lisa had once left on the shared drive labeled Read Me First, full of network diagrams, flow logic, a section titled Emergency Sync Recovery, if all else fails. It was 10 pages of gibberish to him. Meticulous, beautiful, encrypted gibberish. He closed the file and swallowed hard. By 10 o'clock a.m., warehouse errors were compounding. Fulfillment queues were skipping orders at random. International shipments were duplicating SKUs and mislabeling customs values. FedEx flagged a batch of outbound orders as suspected fraudulent metadata. Chatbot was now sending canned replies that started with "We're experiencing unexpected awesomeness. Please hold," a script Lisa had written 2 years ago as a joke. Apparently, no one ever updated it, and the board, they'd stopped emailing. They were now scheduling calls. Lisa's name came up on every one of them, not as an employee, not even as a scapegoat, as the architect, the one they lost, the one they needed. And still, Vince doubled down. "We're not calling her." Snapped again, pacing like a caged hyena. She left. She burned that bridge, or someone whispered, "You set it on fire," and handed her the matches. But Vince didn't hear that part, or pretended not to. Lisa was still in her hammock at noon. She was halfway through a mystery novel and considering whether to make grilled cheese or tacos for lunch. Her phone buzzed again, a voicemail this time, from a number she didn't recognize. She didn't listen to it. Didn't need to. Gravity was working just fine. By Wednesday morning, the Vierks executive suite was running on caffeine, panic, and the kind of desperate optimism usually found in gambling addicts right before their final hand. The system still wasn't down, per se. It was up, technically functional, but every single output it touched was wrong. Misaligned. Corrupted by omission. And worst of all, there was no obvious cause, no error logs, no smoking gun. Only silence. Shipping queues were now processing at 11% efficiency. Clients were bailing. Refunds were hemorrhaging. Finance updated the projected losses to $17.8 million by end of week. And the CTO, still windburned from Aruba, had just texted LOL good luck before boarding a plane back to the States. He knew better than to get involved now. It was officially a career-ending firestorm. Vince did the thing execs always do when they finally admit they are out of their depth. He threw money at it. Big money. He called in a digital logistics integrity specialist from New York, some consultant with a text bio, a 6-figure retainer, and a LinkedIn profile that read like it had been written by ChatGPT on a Red Bull bender. Name was Ezra. Wore loafers with no socks, and carried a laptop that probably cost more than most employees' monthly rent. Said things like signal fidelity and logic stacks before lunch. He arrived at 10:30 a.m., plugged into the system, cracked his knuckles, and went to work in silence while the entire C-suite hovered like kids waiting for a magician to pull a rabbit out of their burning office building. 15 minutes passed. No words. 30 minutes. Ezra frowned once, then smirked. At 45 minutes, he finally spoke. "Okay," he said, sitting back. "This isn't broken." It's leaned forward. "Sorry." Ezra turned the laptop around, showing a diagnostic screen with cascading log sequences, handshake failures, and a perfect uptime curve that looked like a flat line. "You didn't crash. You didn't get hacked. You didn't even suffer corruption." "So what is it?" the CFO asked, sweating through his collar. Ezra raised an eyebrow. "You ever seen a front door that closes perfectly, but only opens if you know the trick to lifting the handle just so? What this is?" Vince scoffed. "So it's just locked." Ezra laughed, short, sharp, almost musical. "Not locked, not blocked, just waiting. This system is airtight, elegant, secure in ways I don't usually see outside of government work. Whoever built this didn't just know logistics, they knew human behavior. They built it to survive sabotage, but not stupidity." Brandon cleared his throat. "Lisa Marks built it." Ezra paused. "Who?" "Our former lead systems analyst." Someone else added, "We let her go." Ezra slowly closed his laptop and leaned back, folding his arms. "Then you better call her." Vince bristled. "We've already got resources. You don't have a system problem," Ezra cut in. "You have a Lisa problem." Vince's face turned a shade of red usually reserved for stroke victims and sports cars. "She sabotaged us." "No," Ezra said, almost kindly. "She protected you from yourself, and you fired her." Silence, the kind of silence that feels like a countdown. Ezra stood up, slung his bag over his shoulder, and adjusted his cufflinks. "My advice," he said, already heading for the door. "Wire her whatever she wants, full control, front-end access, indemnity, and get out of her way. And if we don't," Vince snapped. Ezra smiled. "Then you'll be manually sorting order spreadsheets with interns and duct tape for the next 8 months, and by Q4, be renting out this office space to vape startups." He left without another word. Vince didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the door like it had betrayed him. He looked older now, not just tired, withered. His collar hung crooked, his jaw slack. The hands that once waved off Lisa's concerns with smug dismissiveness were now twitching against the table like they were trying to escape his body. Someone in the room finally said what everyone else was thinking. "We need Lisa." And nobody disagreed. At exactly 6:13 p.m. that evening, Lisa's inbox dinged with a name she hadn't seen in years. It wasn't Vince. It was Trina from HR, the same Trina who once told Lisa to smile more in meetings and soften her emails so the leadership team wouldn't feel attacked by data-driven logic. Email subject line read, "Exciting consulting opportunity at Virx Solutions." Lisa didn't even open it at first. She just stared at the preview from her kitchen counter, sipping tea and watching her cat chew on a succulent like it owed him money. She gave it a solid 20 minutes. Then, with the grace of someone who had no reason to rush, she clicked it open. The email was the digital equivalent of corporate groveling dressed up in perfume. Phrases like "your unique insight," "mission-critical systems," and "invaluable leadership memory." Not a single mention of the word mistake. Not one line acknowledging she'd been publicly humiliated, walked out, and replaced by chaos in a suit. The request was simple. Virx would love to retain her on a short-term basis to help evaluate and realign their core fulfillment systems. Timing was flexible but urgent. Compensation competitive. Lisa chuckled. She hit forward. To Burnside at Legal Shield Group Com subject. Consulting offer Virx Solutions. Her attorney, Diane Burnside, was a force of nature with a voice like bourbon and an email signature that ended with, "I bill by the hour, not by the emotion." Lisa added 2 lines beneath the forward. "Triple my old rate, paid upfront. No direct reporting, no NDA, no Vince." Then she put her phone down, poured another cup of tea, and opened her laptop, not to log into the Virx system, but to edit her garden spreadsheet. She was trying to plan when to repot the lemon tree. An hour later, Diane replied, confirmed, drafting response. Indemnity clause, full liability release, and a non-negotiable clause stating she chooses who to interface with. No contact with Vince unless written consent is given. Also, added a clause for a one-time reputation restoration bonus if they try to frame this as a collaboration instead of a damage control measure. Lisa smiled. Surgical. No screaming, no vengeance, just gravity and lawyers. By the next morning, the contract was in her inbox, fully executed, signature required. She skimmed it, verified the terms. Payment would hit her account by noon. They'd done it. They'd caved. They needed the ghost in the machine. Now the ghost had terms. No office visits. She'd work remote. She'd choose the contact person, not Vince, not Trina, not anyone who had pretended she was invisible for 14 years. She picked Brandon. He may have been green, but he was never cruel, never dismissive, and she remembered how his hands shook when she first taught him how to run batch test queries without corrupting the cache. She sent him a short email, "Brandon, need read/write access to prod plus rollback privileges. You'll be my point of contact. Everyone else can stay in the panic room. Don't talk, just listen." "LM," he replied in 4 minutes flat. "Thank you, access restored. I'll stay out of your way, I'm sorry." Lisa didn't reply. She didn't need to. She wasn't back for friendship or apology or closure. She was back because she chose to be. And she would leave the second the system hummed again. Not 1 second sooner, not 1 second later. This wasn't revenge. It was maintenance. And she was the only one qualified. At exactly 11:02 a.m. on Thursday, Lisa clicked the login link they'd sent her. It wasn't even secure. She rolled her eyes and dropped her own credentials through a private VPN tunnel, patched into a sidecar server she had spun up in her garage years ago. back when she still believed in redundancy. Welcome screen of the Virx Core fulfillment dashboard blinked to life, sluggish and stuttering like a stroke victim trying to remember its name. She didn't panic. She opened her terminal, navigated through 7 directories they'd forgotten even existed, typed in a command string that hadn't been touched since 2018. The system paused, like a dog sniffing its owner's hand after a long absence. Then, obediently, it opened. She keyed in the handshake script. LMRKS HNDSHK finally XC, a soft ding echoed through her headphones. One line of green text appeared. Welcome back, Lisa. Everything below it flicked into motion. Backlogs flushed. Queues realigned. Inventory caches resinced. Sync servers stopped choking. Dashboards lit up like Christmas morning. The warehouse maps updated in real time. Even the chatbot, long thought feral, started responding like a Harvard grad with excellent customer service etiquette. She sat back, sipping her coffee, watching the numbers flow. She didn't rush. She let the system breathe. In the Virx war room, the tension was thick enough to chew. The execs were standing shoulder to shoulder, staring at Brandon's laptop as the metrics flipped from red to yellow to solid green. All of it timed to the minute Lisa keyed in that handshake, from complete failure to full operational sync in 48 seconds. Ezra, the consultant, leaned against the whiteboard and muttered under his breath, elegant, obscure, safe, damn good work. Nobody replied. Vince, eyes sunken, face pale, cleared his throat like he was gearing up for one last swing. I think I should talk to her, clear the air. Brandon looked up from his keyboard and blinked. She said not to, she's a contractor now. She doesn't make the rules. Brandon turned the screen toward him. Lisa's Slack profile had only one message under her name, I do now. Vince looked like someone had just hit him with a rolled-up NDA. His jaw worked silently, trying to summon a word that didn't sound like surrender. None came. Ezra, still smiling faintly, just nodded toward the door. You've got nothing to say she wants to hear. By noon, the systems had fully stabilized. Finance confirmed that automated billing resumed. Client dashboards reflected accurate inventory. The chatbot even issued a public apology to one of the major vendors. We apologize for the recent confusion. Your patience during our transition was deeply appreciated. Lisa had written that canned phrase 7 years ago for an outage they never had, until now. HR filed her contractor paperwork with a bright red priority flag. They waived the background check, waived the onboarding video, waived everything. Final payment hit her account at 12:42 p.m., $87,000 upfront. Lisa never responded. She just watched the green bars hold steady, the system purring like a well-fed panther. A few of the newer devs were messaging her private Slack channel now, little thank yous, awestruck emojis, even a cat gif or two. She ignored them all, not out of spite, out of focus. Her work wasn't done yet. She still had to make sure it was idiot-proof, which at Virx was a higher bar than usual. Back at HQ, Vince stood in the hallway alone, outside the war room. His tie hung limp, his collar had wilted. He looked like a man who'd spent 20 years pretending to know things and had finally been asked to prove it. Lisa never saw him. She never had to. Her system spoke louder than he ever did. The wire hit her account at 1:18 p.m. Lisa didn't check it right away. She already knew it was coming. The moment the last fulfillment node came back online and the dashboard settled into stable green, she knew the money would follow. It was never about the cash. It was about the acknowledgement, and that came the second the war room fell silent. Still, she opened her banking app later that evening just to watch the number change. Not out of greed, out of closure. $87,000, paid in full. No questions asked. No negotiations. Just a note in the memo line, per contract, full scope execution. She closed the app, took a sip of Pinot Noir, and leaned back into the Adirondack chair on the porch of her Airbnb, legs kicked up on the railing, breeze whispering off the lake like a secret she already knew. Somewhere across the water, a loon called. It sounded like satisfaction. Back at Virx, the fallout began before the dust could settle. At 3:06 p.m., board convened in a closed-door emergency session. They didn't invite Vince, but he showed up anyway. Pale, twitching, mumbling about operational continuity and legacy system opacity. He tried to explain how the systems had been sabotaged, how Lisa's structure was unnecessarily complex. He even brought a stack of color-coded printouts. No one looked at them. One board member, a gray-haired woman who'd been silent through most of the call, finally spoke. Fired the architect, she said quietly, to look tough. Vince opened his mouth to respond. Nothing came out, just a dry, papery breath. They let him sit in that silence for 7 full seconds before moving on. Ezra, the consultant, was piped in remotely from a WeWork lounge in Manhattan. No PowerPoint, no drama, just one slide, system review, conclusion. He adjusted his glasses and said there was no flaw, no sabotage, no breach, just a safeguard. Pause. She built it right. He continued. You broke it. Someone in the room coughed. Lisa Marks built a system designed to protect itself from bad actors and bad decisions. You triggered its defenses, and then you blamed the firewall for not letting the fire in. The CEO didn't speak, just scribbled something into a leather notebook and closed it with a snap. By end of day Friday, Vince was reassigned to strategic partnerships, which is corporate for clean out your office, and go right blog, posts no one will read. Rumors spread like mildew. Some said he was suing. Others said he was already interviewing at a startup that made digital dog collars. No one cared. Internally, HR circulated a memo reminding managers to value internal expertise and foster retention. It was 2 paragraphs long. Lisa's name wasn't mentioned, but it might as well have been carved into the footer. Back in the Airbnb, Lisa finished her glass of wine, washed it out with lake water, and went back inside. The fireplace was crackling. A half-finished crossword sat on the coffee table next to her laptop. She didn't turn the laptop on. Not yet. She was in no rush. The system would run fine without her for now. She'd already hardened the permissions, left behind clean documentation, installed a quiet logic check that would alert her if anyone tried to change the root protocols. She wasn't paranoid. She was experienced. Her phone buzzed, a new email. Subject line, Principal Systems Architect, remote $250K base plus equity from a company she'd once applied to fresh out of college. They ghosted her then. Not this time. This time, the message started with, we followed the Vierx incident. We know who built it. Like to talk. Lisa stared at the screen. She didn't reply. She didn't delete it either. She just smiled, set the phone down, and went back to her crossword. One clue left, 7-letter word for vindication. She filled it in slowly. LISM, no, that's too much. She erased it. Her phone buzzed again. Second offer. Bigger company, better title, triple pay. She took one more sip of wine, looked out over the lake, and whispered to herself, I'll think about it. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.